Welcome to the Inner Athlete Podcast, where we help young athletes, parents, and coaches build strong, resilient, and high-performing athletes for sport and life. I'm Trent head strength and conditioning coach and founder of Inner Athlete. Each episode, we break down the training, mindset, and habits that actually matter, from strength and speed development to injury prevention, confidence, and long-term athletic growth. Whether you're a parent trying to support your child or an athlete chasing their potential, you're in the right place. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Inner Athlete Podcast. I've got a friendly face here today, a returning host. Yeah, co-host? I'll say, yeah, co-host. I got Jack Cordy here with me. Jack's been with us for just over 2 years now. How's that journey been for you?
It's been a ride, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's been very enjoyable, learned lots along the way, and continue to learn. So
yeah, no, it's
great.
Jack's been a phenomenal coach with us. He's helped me out with the Bentley Greens last year with the 16 boys, and I had a bit of a star-studded run into the semis or into the elimination final. Unfortunately, getting pipped by South Melbourne. Unfortunately, that was a tough game, but nonetheless, the team actually did really well considering where they started at the start of the season as well. He's helped out with the Dean Jones program as well with the AFL Aussie Rules off-season, pre-season programs in the past, delivering more of the speed development, change of direction, or athletic development, which is really what it is essentially. Helped deliver a few footy programs as well, and obviously been just a great coach with a lot of the members here. He's become, a part of the furniture kind of deal, in a good sense, that is, working with the members, and it also helps out with the nutrition side as well, doing a lot of nutrition consults, and some of the members have seen some great body transformation changes or results, I'd say. So some of our members have lost a lot of weight, but making it more of a slow and steady process. To some of our younger members, they're wanting to pack on a bit more size and strength and muscle. I've also seen that side, and also for me, obviously being Jack's boss, but also I guess a mentor in that sense, and seeing him grow as a coach is it's been great. From where he first started and starting in the PT days and to where he is now, and now the guys starting EP. I think I'm just like gassing you up now.
Yeah, hype me up.
Yeah.
No, it's been a really good journey. It's been great to learn under your wisdom and your experience, and kind of help me, I guess, develop as a coach myself, but as a young adult and so on and so forth into life. Yeah,
it's like a proud parent moment. No,
that's it.
All right, let's shut up and move on. Now, the reason why I got you on today is what happens when we work with athletes once they're actually strong, I guess, or strong enough. And, the strength training is more focused on, I guess, the maintenance side with a lot of the athletes. So with this side, in terms of, getting athletes stronger, there's a point where we want to get them to be strong enough for their sport. And to some degree, that's going to help with their performance. But a lot of the times some athletes can go two different ways. Either they over rely on the strength itself and not working on the skills to fill in the gaps or other areas of the athleticism, or they treat it as a video game where they kind of feel like they save that. It's like, all right, I'm strong enough, I don't need to do any more strength training, in kind of like the traps that a lot of athletes can fall into. So what happens if I'm strong enough now, and now what? Like, what are some of your suggestions of if someone's been working with us for 6 to 12 months or even 24 months, what are some of your suggestions or the way we need to actually start to approach things moving forward?
Yeah, so I think what kind of happens when, I guess an athlete reaches their strength targets is that, sure, hitting PBs feel great, but then, you kind of often reach a psychological finish line rather than, a springboard moving forward. There's no kind of I guess, what's next. And you can kind of get into a bit of a false sense of security, kind of, hitting these metrics and that kind of stuff. Athletes, they might think, I'm strong now, I've arrived, which is, great, but then it kind of reduces, I guess, intentional progression. The athlete isn't going to want to, push themselves intentionally forward. They think oh, I'm here now, that's it. And I think strength without variation kind of leads to just habitual driven training or habit driven training, and that's where adaptation really kind of starts to plateau. So I think, some common kind of mistakes that people make is they just think bigger loads without purpose. It could be an eccentric load as well, adding, more eccentrics or just general load. It's just going to create, greater fatigue. It's not actually going to drive performance. And then also doing the same program for too long. So obviously we know that the research supports periodization, and we use, obviously periodization here in the facility. But if athletes out there are doing the same program for, 12 or longer than 12 weeks, there's not going to be any systematic variation. It's just going to kind of be, a bit more just like linear repetition.
There's a lack of, I guess, change or adaptation.
Yeah. And then that's kind of harps on as to why goals must kind of evolve, right? Performance goals should kind of shift more from absolute lifts or max strength to movement quality, sport application, speed, kind of we'll probably mention soon, filling the gaps. You've arrived, you've got the strength. What do we need to work on now?
Yeah, it's okay to some degree it's strong, but like you said, it's that application. And then I think what we'll end up touching on a little bit more, I guess, in another episode is kind of that strength reserve side. It's you don't need to have, a 200 kilo back squat as such, but obviously getting stronger is going to allow you to apply more force, but how do you actually utilize that force and be able to repeat that, within your game or competition, whatever you may be. And I think, let's talk about the goal setting. And I think going back to the goal setting side is probably the most quintessential thing. Is that's your actual reason, that's your why to actually training. If we lose sight or purpose of what that goal is, if we're just training for the sake of training, especially more from the youth athlete side, I think youth athletes are at a point where they have a specific goal or intention or squad or event that they really want to focus on. If they're not actually focusing on the goal of, I want to do this at this event, and then breaking it down into their smaller goals of, okay, what does that actually look like? And then what are your weaknesses, but obviously your opportunities to improve on, to fill in those gaps specifically. And that's where the strength training needs to come into effect to fill in those gaps specifically. So say, for example, you've got an athlete who's really strong now. Okay, great, cool. But, we look at their jump scores. Their counter movement jump and squat jump are pretty much the same. It's okay, if they're a basketball or a soccer player, we know their counter movement jump should be relatively higher, or I guess significantly higher. It's depending on what their position they play, but usually that's what we want to see. Okay, now we have to improve their stiffness and the movement quality of being more that reactive strength. So can they actually load up their legs like springs in order to get more height, and it's going to be more relative to their performance on the field.
Yeah, need to learn to use the stretch shortening cycle.
Yeah, essentially. So there's so many ways you can go about this. I'll use Fernanda as a bit of an example, because I think she's her strength is she started her mid thigh pull when she first started was in the low 100s, so it was 108 or something like that, right? Yeah. And this is a hammer thrower by the way as well. And then probably close to a year later, we got to 252 kilos.
Yeah, skyrocketed.
Yeah, so skyrocketed. So, what's that? Double and a half, right? So 150% increase. If you're getting value from the Inner Athlete podcast, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more parents and young athletes find the right guidance and keeps this podcast growing. Back to the show. From there, and then we started to see PBs occur in her throws, because we started to work on what's the low hanging fruit to improve her performance. A big thing for her was just improving her ability to reach out to create more length. So you increase the moment arm in order for the throw, and that actually helped to get a little bit more in the performance side. So getting a little bit more reach. The second part was improving her strength as the hammer got faster, to keeping the strength, keeping her low until the actual launch of the hammer. Okay, now we've been working on that, working more that bottom position work, whether it's you do some deep tier work or we're doing heavy isometrics in that bottom position, was a bit more specific to her. And now we've seen a bit more of that performance increase as well. So, and then the third part is really improving her ability to generate high force with a relatively heavy load as well, which is kind of what hammer is. The load obviously magnifies the faster you spin as well. So we really specific started to address those gaps in her training and modified, and then she's still getting PBs. Now she's moving up to a heavier hammer, which is from 3 to 4 kilos. Doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're spinning an object, you know, I don't know how fast they're spinning, but that thing flies like 50 plus meters in the air.
Yeah.
It's pretty darn fast.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting that you used a female example there, and the research kind of indicates that female athletes often start to plateau earlier in their training when the training doesn't progress like neuromuscularly. So changing those adaptations, you know, working on, I guess, those different positions where you've identified in the skill that she could work on, right? They're going to have a different neuromuscular adaptation to just max strength, which she's already kind of built, right? And she's been building her power with like the Olympic lifts. Now you've kind of shifted the needle a little bit more into these other areas, which is going to continue to allow her to progress. Whereas like, if you just keep a woman doing the same thing or a female doing the same thing, they're going to plateau a lot faster as compared to like a male would. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I just kind of just saw it as like, we're not making progress, we need to change it.
Yeah.
That's just the way I've seen it. And if I was to look over my career as well, I would say, guys, you can leave them on a program for longer and they can still probably leak out a bit more changes, you know, in terms of adaptation relative to what females can. And then I think females, I guess, from what I've seen, the variability seems to be, I guess, a little bit more variability, a bit more frequently, is probably like enable them to actually continue to develop and move forward.
Yeah, and part of that as well is like they don't go as into much like psychological monotony. So like they're not just, you know, thinking about the same thing consistently, because their like training is changing. There's variations. There's new things to kind of master, new skills to learn. And we can kind of tell is like a general trend that we've probably both seen is that females tend to try and get the drills, the exercises that you prescribe them perfect. They want to nail that technique down pat so that they know that they're getting the most out of it, which is obviously what we want as coaches. So it's great to see like that from that perspective. And then, yeah, continuing to kind of, you know, progress things, change things up. It's going to stop them from getting into just like a monotonous state where they're just kind of doing the same thing and they don't really feel like they're getting anywhere, which they might physically still be improving, but psychologically they might not feel like they're improving. And that's still a plateau in some way, shape or form.
And I think just to kind of like bring it back to the main point that we said is just like, once they're at a certain level of strength, like you said, especially with Fernanda, is like we're starting to like find where those little gaps are and actually addressing those more specifically as well. The funny thing is though, when you start addressing those gaps, this is just life in general, I'd say, other gaps will actually start to show. But it doesn't mean you're actually going backwards. It actually means that everything is kind of moving up and you've probably spent a bit more time in a certain area and then now you've spent some time in another area in order to make that to catch up. But in general, if you look at it at a macro zooming back, you can actually see the general progress of the athlete. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just kind of like the part of like learning and developing. I think there's a lot of professional athletes that like that. They're kind of, who's a good example? Steph Curry, you know, his jump shot, he actually was quite weak. And obviously hitting in the gym was a big thing because the way that you shoot from the chest. So if you shoot from the chest, obviously you can generate more power versus more that overhead shot. But the problem is though, you know, at some point you're going to get rejected quite often. You're shooting from a low point, and also your release is actually going to be a little bit longer as well, right? If you got your hand up and cocked, and you can kind of just shoot in a shorter period of time. And it's funny, back end story, Under Armour designed their shoes in order to help them to have a quicker release.
There you go.
And that's the backstory on the Steph Curry's. Yeah, so you know, thanks to Under Armour, I think they shaved off. I think it was like something so minor. It was like maybe 0.03 seconds off.
That's still pretty cool though.
Yeah,
from a shoe
perspective, to make the shoes a lot more reactive.
Yeah.
For him to get the shot off, and I thought, oh, it's obviously working as the greatest 3-point shooter of all time.
But then, like again, I guess you look at him in like high school compared to like, you know, college NBA, and like obviously he's not the biggest guy in the court, but you can just see, you know, pretty much how much muscle he's built over that time, and then that's just even extended his range, right? Even further.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good examples of, I guess, athletes that are very skilled and they kind of go from the other way. I know we're talking about obviously developing strength and maintaining strength. The other part is like, if you look at team sports is, or I'll use soccer because we look with a lot of soccer teams or soccer athletes at the moment. They're getting bigger, powerful, and obviously a lot stronger, right? Strength is becoming more of a factor in a lot of these sports than ever before because of the physicality component. I think people are understanding more of the laws of the game. And for me, having no soccer, like very minimal soccer background, I think I only played soccer in high school for like 1 year. That was the extent of it. And now actually understanding the rules and my background in rugby league and understanding contact and working with the AFL, so at the VFL level in junior footy, is when you start to understand the laws, obviously strength becomes a bigger factor moving forward. So it's actually important to actually continue to develop that. And your competition will get stronger. So you actually have to still continue to develop your strength, especially as junior athletes as well. You might be playing top age 14s. Next year, you're playing 16s. So you're going to be bottom age. You're going to be there for 2 years.
Yeah.
So you're going to be facing bigger opponents as you're going through your development, no matter what. So it's important to still continue that strength development, no matter what, even beyond that as well.
Yeah, and I think it's starting to kind of become a norm now, especially, I think, obviously with what we're doing with Bentley Greens, but most soccer clubs and even football clubs is like having S&C as just a part of their training and a part of their program. Like, I think everyone's kind of coming to the realization of how important it is, and if you've got every other club doing it and then you're the one club not doing it, you're just putting yourself in a disadvantage, right? And like, if you've got a stronger, faster athlete, they're going to be a more well-rounded athlete compared to, someone that's got better skills. And like, sure, the skill side of things is important, but being a robust athlete is going to, help you out in the long term compared to the skills, which you can just kind of, develop with practice. Same thing with the strength, but you've got a head start, right?
Yeah.
Like it's all important.
And a lot of athletes see the strength side as a long-term investment.
Yeah.
As well. So, especially off in pre-season, you're looking at obviously gaining your strength, and then strength training throughout the season is all about the maintenance of your strength as well. It's strength is the general foundation. It's not so much the finish line when it comes to your training, because unfortunately you adapt to what you expose or don't expose yourself to. So if you're not actually getting stronger, inadvertently you are actually getting weaker because you're not actually training to stimulate the outcomes that you want. So as strength and conditioning coaches would understand this, and some coaches would be the specific adaptations to impose demands. So the SAID principle, we get better at the thing we specifically expose ourselves to.
Yeah.
And in this case, we want to continually to develop strength off and pre, and then in season it's more like you can still develop strength in season if with some smart programming and knowing when to push, knowing when to rest, especially depending on the schedule as well.
Yeah, and I think like on that, like you mentioned that like obviously we want to maintain the strength, but like, and you still can improve it. And I think we still probably do want to improve it because like I guess maintenance mode can kind of quietly lead to decline, right? If the body adapts to repeated stimulus, right? If you're just using the same load, throughout the season, you're going to slowly kind of reverse, right? You're not going to get any stronger. You might actually lose a little bit of strength as well with fatigue from your sport. So the load, the volume, the speed has to kind of change, and we can just change one thing in that lift, but that's still going to help the athlete progress. So whether it's the velocity or progressive overload, like we can still try and do that in season too.
Yeah,
just not pushing it as much as off season, because we want to make sure that their recovery is the most important thing in season.
Yeah, and what's the most, and linking to game day.
Yeah, exactly.
That's basically where you make your dollars.
Yeah.
or you want to continue to grow and develop. And it's playing the games and seeing the outcomes of the work.
That's a wrap for part 1 of this episode on the Inner Athlete podcast. We've covered some incredible insights today, but there's still so much more to come. Make sure to tune in to part 2 for the rest of the conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, give us a like, and share it with your network to help us reach even more listeners like you. Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you in part 2.